I'm selling our home. My lover's kids need room. That's what she said, right there in the middle of Christmas dinner. My name is Rick. I'm 42 years old. I live in Springfield, Illinois. And that was the exact moment I realized my marriage was over. Candace, my wife of 17 years, raised her glass and made the announcement like she was toasting to good fortune. She had this little smirk on her face, like she was proud of it, like it was cute. Around the table, my family froze. Forks clinked softly on plates, then nothing. Just silence. My mom coughed into her napkin. My brother Darren tried to laugh, but it came out like a dying engine. Wait, what? Our kids, David and Abby, sat across from us. David's 16, Abby's 13. Both of them stared at her like they hadn't heard right. Abby's eyes darted to mine. David's face turned pale. I just sat there, my fork halfway to my mouth. Chicken parmesan. She'd made it herself. I remember because it was my favorite. That night, it tasted like cement. Candace, I said slowly, what did you just say? She leaned back, swirling her wine like she was on some kind of reality show. I said, I'm selling the house. Jason's kids need their own rooms. Jason. The name hit me like a brick. I had met him once, some guy from her office. He wore skinny ties and always talked with his hands. At the time, I thought nothing of it. Now it was like hearing the punchline to a joke I never saw coming. No one spoke. David pushed his plate back. Abby's lips trembled like she was going to cry. Darren kept shaking his head like he was stuck in a loop. I stood up. Not fast. Not loud. Just calm. I'm going to my office, I said. Candace rolled her eyes. Rick, come on. Don't be dramatic. I didn't answer. I didn't look at anyone else. I walked out of that dining room with the same thought playing over and over in my head. She really thinks she's won. She thought I'd yell. That I'd cause a scene. That I'd get angry and beg her not to do this in front of the kids. But I didn't. I walked down the hall and shut the door to my office. My hands were steady. My jaw was clenched, but I wasn't going to explode. Because I had something she didn't know about. Tucked away behind my bookshelf, under a stack of tax documents, was a brown envelope I had been filling for weeks. Phone records. Hotel receipts. A photo I'd printed out from a private investigator's report. She thought I was clueless. She had no idea I'd known about Jason for months. As I sat down at my desk, I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt ready. This wasn't the end. This was the start of something else. Something better. Smarter. I slid open the drawer and pulled out the envelope. It felt heavier than before. Or maybe I was just finally ready to use it. She wanted to play dirty. She had no idea what was coming. That Christmas dinner didn't come out of nowhere. Looking back, I can't believe I didn't see it sooner. All the little signs were there. They'd been there for months. I just didn't want to connect the dots. It started maybe 2 months before Christmas. Candace began working late more often. Traffic's insane, she'd say, walking in an hour after dinner had gone cold. Her makeup still fresh, her hair still perfect. I'd ask what held her up, and she'd wave it off. Just end of quarter madness. You know how it is. Sure, I knew. But that wasn't what got me. It was the gym membership. Candace had never been one for exercise. She used to say treadmills were medieval torture machines. Then suddenly, she was obsessed. Waking up at 5 a.m., going to yoga twice a week, buying new leggings and expensive running shoes. I joked about it once. What's his name? She laughed. You're ridiculous. Maybe I was. Then the clothes started showing up. Packages from those sleek little online boutiques she'd never cared about before. Leather boots. Silk blouses. Lingerie she never wore for me. I asked where the money was coming from. She said she'd picked up some freelance consulting on the side. That was news to me. The kids noticed, too. One night over dinner, David said, Mom's always on her phone lately. She's just busy, I replied. He shrugged. She texts like, a lot. Then came the text. I hadn't planned on checking her phone. I was just trying to get a picture of Abby from our last camping trip. Candace had taken it. I went at her gallery, and that's when the message popped up, right there at the top of the screen. Jason, miss you. Can't wait for us. My stomach dropped. I remember just staring at it, not opening it, not scrolling. Just those 7 words. Miss you. Can't wait for us. Us. I set the phone down like it burned. When I asked her about it later, I kept my voice light, casual. Hey, got a weird message when I was on your phone. From Jason? She didn't even blink. Oh my God, she said, laughing. You're so paranoid. He jokes like that with everyone. He calls our boss baby sometimes. It's just his sense of humor. She kissed my cheek and walked away. Just like that. And I let it go. I told myself it was nothing. I wanted to believe it was nothing. 17 years, 2 kids, a mortgage, family vacations, Christmases, birthdays. You don't throw all that away over one weird text. But deep down, my gut knew. It wasn't just the text. It was the way she never touched me anymore. The way she'd flinch if I reached for her hand on the couch. The way she'd go silent when I walked into a room, then glance at her phone like it was some lifeline. I started staying up later, pretending to read, listening for the sounds of her typing in the dark. Sometimes she'd laugh at something quiet and breathy, and I'd sit there wondering who she was talking to. The Candace I married used to fall asleep on my shoulder during movies. Now she kept her phone under her pillow like a secret. So no, that Christmas dinner didn't come out of nowhere. She'd been easing us all into it for weeks, chipping away at what we had, bit by bit, until her announcement didn't even feel like a surprise. More like a final confirmation. The difference was, she thought she was the only one holding cards. She didn't know I'd been watching, waiting, collecting. She didn't know the man sitting quietly across from her was already building his move. In my office, I opened the drawer and pulled out the brown envelope. I'd kept it hidden for weeks. Not because I was unsure, no, I knew exactly what she was doing. I kept it because I needed the right moment. And now, I had it. The envelope felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Inside were phone records, hotel receipts, screenshots, and, most damning of all, a photo of her and Jason standing outside a Marriott near Rockford, arms wrapped around each other like a couple of teenagers. She thought I didn't know. She thought I'd just sit there while she hijacked my home, my kids' lives, our whole history, like it meant nothing. I walked back into the dining room. It had only been a few minutes, but the room had gone stale. Abby still hadn't touched her food. David sat rigid, arms crossed, his eyes darting between his mom and my empty seat. Darren looked like he wanted to disappear into his wine glass. My mother, she just stared down at her plate like it might offer an escape. Candace looked up when she saw me. Her smile was gone. Her posture stiffened just slightly, just enough for me to catch it. "Everything okay?" she asked. I didn't answer. I walked around the table, envelope in hand, and stopped beside her chair. I set it down gently, right next to her wine glass. "What's that?" she asked. "Since we're making announcements," I said, voice calm as water, I figured I'd share something too. Candace stared at the envelope like it was radioactive. "Rick." "You can open it," I said. "I'd actually prefer it." She hesitated. Everyone watched. I think my brother stopped breathing. Even the kids were frozen, eyes wide, lips parted. Finally, she opened it. She pulled out the first sheet, phone records with Jason's number highlighted over and over. Late nights, weekends, lunch breaks that lasted 3 hours. She shuffled to the next page. A hotel receipt. 2 guests. 1 room. 3 nights. Then came the photo. I saw the moment her face changed. The color drained out. Her eyes didn't blink. She set the photo down and looked at me. I didn't look away. "You went through my things," she said, trying to sound outraged, but her voice cracked. "No," I said simply. "I hired someone." Her lips parted, but no words came. I turned to the table. "Jason," I said, looking at the kids, "isn't just her coworker. He's the man she's been seeing for the last 4 months. I've got phone records, emails, and hotel logs to prove it." David sat back slowly, his face unreadable. Abby looked at her mother, then at me, then back at her mother. "Is it true?" she whispered. Candace didn't answer. "You were gonna throw away our house for him," David said, his voice tight. "For some guy." Candace tried to speak, but nothing came out. "I didn't say anything until now," I continued, "because I was hoping, some part of me, that you'd come clean on your own. But you didn't." She finally stood up. "Rick, we don't need to do this in front of everyone." "We do," I said, "because you made your declaration loud and proud at this table. Now you get to deal with mine." Darren whistled under his breath and pushed his chair back. "Damn." Candace's eyes were glassy now. "Rick, I never meant for it to happen like this." "But you meant for it to happen," I said. "Didn't you?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. David stood up. "I'm going to my room." "David," she tried, but he was already walking down the hall. Abby sat quietly, like she wanted to disappear. I looked at Candace one last time. "You can pour another glass if you want, but I think you'll find it won't go down as smooth now." She clutched the edge of the table like it might hold her up. And for the first time, her confidence cracked. Candace didn't sit back down. She stood there gripping the edge of the table like she was waiting for someone to wake her up from a bad dream. My mom cleared her throat, but didn't say anything. Darren looked at me, then at her, then back down at his plate, like he wanted to teleport out of there. Candace finally spoke. Okay, hold on. This is getting blown out of proportion. I leaned forward. Really? Because I don't think printing out your affair counts as overreacting. It's not what it looks like. That line. That tired, empty line. You've been sleeping with a man named Jason who is not your husband, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's exactly what it looks like. She shook her head, brushing hair behind her ear with shaking hands. We didn't plan this. It just happened. You've been so distant, Rick. The house felt like a prison. I sat back in my chair. And you thought the best solution was to move another man's kids into it? She looked at me like she expected sympathy. I was going to talk to you after the holidays. Candace, Darren cut in. What the hell were you thinking? Dropping that news in the middle of Christmas dinner. Because I couldn't keep living a lie. She snapped. I've been carrying this for months. Then maybe you should have come clean when it started, I said, voice sharp now. Not when you already made plans to bulldoze our lives. David came back into the room. His face was unreadable, but he didn't look at her. He sat back down next to Abby, who was still silent. Candace's eyes darted to him. David. I'm sorry. He didn't respond. She stepped toward him. Please. You know I love you. I didn't want to hurt you or your sister. You didn't want to hurt us, he said, eyes flashing. So you blow up Christmas dinner with, hey, we're moving, and also I've got a new boyfriend with kids I like better? What kind of messed up logic is that? Abby looked up, tears in her eyes. Are we not enough for you? That broke her. Candace dropped her head and finally cried. I was trying to make it work. I swear I was. I didn't mean for it to get this far. But it did, I said. You let it. You picked him. You picked his kids. You picked this. My brother stood up and pointed at her. You've lost your damn mind, Candace. You think this is how people fix a marriage? With secrets and hotel bills and surprise? I'm gutting your life over chicken parmesan. She looked around the table, desperate now. I didn't want it to go like this. David stood again. Then why'd you do it? She couldn't answer. She just cried harder. You're just gonna leave us for them? He asked, his voice cracking. Candace reached for him, but he stepped back. Don't. Silence fell over the room again. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. No one touched their food. Abby wiped her eyes. Darren poured himself another drink. I think you should go pack a bag, I said quietly. Candace looked up, mouth half open. What? You need to leave tonight. But where am I supposed to go? I don't care, I said. Go to Jason's. You wanted this life? Start living it. She stood frozen for a second, like she might argue, but then just nodded. She looked around one last time, her eyes stopping on the kids. They didn't look back. And then, slowly, she walked out of the room. Nobody followed. Candace came back down the stairs about 20 minutes later with a duffel bag and a wheeled suitcase. She'd changed out of her holiday dress into jeans and a sweatshirt, but she still looked out of place, like a stranger trying to blend in. She didn't say anything as she walked through the living room. She paused in the front hallway, like she wanted to say goodbye, but no one moved. Abby had curled up on the couch under a throw blanket, her face turned toward the cushions. David sat next to her, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to notice their mom standing there. Candace, I said quietly from the dining room, don't come back without calling first. She nodded stiffly. I'll come back for the kids later, she said, voice low. I stood up. Don't bother. Her head snapped toward me. Excuse me. I'll be filing for divorce first thing tomorrow. And I'll be requesting full custody. She looked like I had slapped her. You can't. I can. And I will. She took a shaky breath. Rick, let's be rational. I don't want to fight you on this. You made your choice, I said. I'm just making mine. She turned toward the door, blinking back more tears. This isn't how I wanted it. I didn't answer. She opened the door just as the headlights of a black SUV turned into the driveway. Jason. Of course. She stepped outside and pulled her suitcase down the steps. The SUV didn't even park. It just idled at the curb. Real classy guy. She loaded her bag into the trunk and got into the passenger seat without looking back. The car pulled away, taillights glowing red in the dark. And then the house was quiet. Not just quiet, hollow. Like it had been vacuum sealed, like everything had been sucked out with her exit. Abby got up and came into the dining room. Her eyes were puffy. Is she really gone? I nodded. Yeah. David followed, arms folded, jaw tight. Good. My mom stood up slowly. I can stay for a while. Help with the kids. I looked at her. She hadn't said much during dinner. I think she'd been too shocked to process any of it. Thanks, Mom. That'd be good. Darren stood too. You want me to come back in the morning? Help you get a lawyer lined up. Already have someone in mind, I said. But yeah, thanks. Abby came to my side and leaned into me. I don't even want to see her again. That hit me hard. I put my arm around her, pulled her in close. You won't have to, I said. We all just stood there for a minute, like we didn't know what came next. The table was still covered in half-eaten food. The candles had burned halfway down. There was an empty wine glass tipped over next to Candace's chair. David looked around and muttered, "What a joke." No one disagreed. That night, after everyone left and the kids were asleep, I sat alone in the living room. The Christmas tree blinked quietly in the corner, casting shadows across the walls. All the presents were still unopened. The whole house smelled like cinnamon and garlic and something else. Loss, maybe. I stared at the front door for a long time. She didn't look back. Not once. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, I was at the lawyer's office by 8 a.m. sharp. I'd called him the night before, Matthew Klein, an old friend of Darren's who specialized in divorce and family law. Guy was sharp, calm, and didn't waste words. I like that. We sat in a quiet conference room that smelled like fresh carpet and printer toner. I handed him the brown envelope and let him flip through it while I explained what happened. He didn't look surprised. You did your homework, he said, holding up the photo of Candace and Jason outside the Marriott. This is solid. I figured I'd need it sooner or later, I said. He nodded slowly, setting the envelope aside. You're going to be in a very strong position. Proof of infidelity, documented evidence, your name on the mortgage and accounts. She's not walking away with much. I leaned back in the chair. I don't want her to walk away with anything more than she's owed. He smiled faintly. We can make that happen. He slid a packet of paperwork toward me. I signed the first few pages without hesitation. Custody? He asked. Full, I said. She can see them, sure. But they stay with me. You think the kids will back that up? David won't even say her name. Abby said she doesn't want to see her again. I'd say that's a yes. He checked a box, made a note. Good. I'll file everything today. After the meeting, I drove straight to the bank. I froze the joint account, cut off the credit cards, and rerouted all our auto pays to my personal one. I wasn't about to fund Candace's new life with Jason, not for a minute longer. Then I went home and changed the locks. Called a locksmith, paid extra for the rush job. New keys, new codes, new start. I walked into the bedroom and stared at her dresser. Empty now. The drawers were half open, as if she left in a hurry. Like maybe some part of her knew she shouldn't be coming back. I pulled the covers off our bed and tossed them into the laundry. Washed everything twice. Scrubbed the kitchen sink. Cleaned the fridge. It wasn't about hygiene, it was about purging. By lunchtime, I felt like the house belonged to me again. The kids were quiet that day. Abby helped my mom bake cookies in the kitchen, and David just hung out in the basement playing Xbox. Nobody mentioned Candace. Nobody asked where she was. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Jason, hey, can we talk? Just want to clear the air. I stared at it for a few seconds, then blocked the number. Clear the air? He could choke on it. I didn't say anything to the kids. They didn't need to know he'd reached out. All that mattered was keeping them steady. That evening, Matthew called. One more thing. Looks like we can recover part of the equity Candace tried to shift before she left. What do you mean? She moved some funds. Started a transfer last week. Probably setting herself up to run. My jaw clenched. Can we get it back? Oh yeah, he said. She didn't do it right. Sloppy work. I almost laughed. She thought she could blindside me with an affair, walk away with our house, and start a new chapter with Jason like we were just a prologue. Like 17 years didn't count. But what she didn't realize was that I wasn't playing catch-up. I was already 3 steps ahead. Let Jason take her in. Let him see what happens when the shine wears off. Because now, I wasn't angry. I was focused. And I was taking everything back. It's been 6 months since that Christmas dinner. Sometimes it feels like 6 days. Other times, 6 years. The kids and I are settled now. We're in a smaller place, not far from my job. 3 bedrooms, a backyard big enough for Abby's garden boxes, and a garage David and I turned into a little workshop. It's not fancy, but it's ours. Quiet. Steady. Real. The old house? I sold it myself. Candace tried to fight me on it, said she deserved her share. My lawyer kindly reminded her of Exhibit A through Z, then told her she could take it to court if she really wanted to. She didn't. She backed down, took what was legally hers, which turned out to be a lot less than she expected. Funny how quickly people lose interest when the money dries up. She tried calling a few times after the divorce was finalized. Once in March, again in April. Left a voicemail about wanting to talk to the kids. I didn't answer. Neither did they. David deleted her number. Abby told me, I don't want to talk to someone who just left. I respected that. I didn't push them. I figured if they wanted to reconnect someday, that would be their choice. But I wasn't going to force anything. I got full custody without a single hiccup. Candace didn't even show up to the final hearing. My lawyer said she probably realized she'd already lost everything that mattered. And she had. David's grades are better than ever. He started working part-time at a hardware store down the street. Says he wants to save up for a car. I told him I'd match whatever he saved. He grinned and said, then I'm saving double. Abby's in her art phase again. She painted a mural on her bedroom wall last week, a sunset with mountains and wildflowers. She asked if she could paint the hallway next. Go for it, I said. I've been sleeping through the night lately. That might sound like a small thing, but it's not. For months, even before Christmas, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what went wrong. What I could have done differently. Now, I get in bed, close my eyes, and wake up to the sound of birds instead of my own thoughts screaming at me. The other night, Darren came over with a six-pack. We sat on the back deck while the kids watched a movie inside. You seem lighter, he said. I nodded. Because I am. He took a sip of his beer and smiled. You know, for a guy who got ambushed at Christmas dinner, you landed on your feet. Better than I thought I would, I admitted. Then he leaned in and said, You hear what happened with Jason? I raised an eyebrow. Nope. Apparently he dumped her 2 months after she moved in. I blinked. Seriously. Dead serious. Told her he wasn't ready for the baggage. Darren shook his head, grinning. Man ran straight into a fire, then complained about the heat. I didn't say anything right away. Just stared out at the yard, at the string lights Abby had helped me hang last week. Candace lost everything chasing someone else's dream. And maybe she thought that was freedom. Maybe she thought she could just start fresh, no consequences. But you don't get to burn a life down and walk away without smelling like smoke. Me? I didn't chase anything. I stood still, picked up what was worth saving, and built something better. I've got my kids. I've got my peace. And I've got the quiet satisfaction of knowing I didn't lose anything worth keeping.